I've been making a lot of jokes lately about how Godzilla movies were the original shared universe, but Toho has apparently been taking the idea really seriously. They recently made a bunch of announcements that came out of a marketing conference that I guess they had it in the works for years, and basically everything they announced is exciting, and like half of it is just batshit insane. So I pulled my good buddy Matt Charles of Geek Stew in to talk about the idea of a modern Godzilla shared universe and all this other crazy stuff that might be happening.
What's cracking, boys and girls?
We're just gonna move fast and loose through these, just our off the cuff impressions of what they claim is coming down the pipeline.
Hot takes hot enough to melt an entire city center of Japan.
They should use that in their press release. So, one of the most interesting things is they've straight up denied that there's going to be a Shin Godzilla follow-up. They've explicitly said no Shin Godzilla.
No. I mean, I know exactly why that's happening from a mutual fandom that I'm in. For those who aren't giant anime fans, so the director of Shin Godzilla, Hideaki Anno, he is also the creator of the famous Neon Genesis Evangelion anime, and was the, I guess, helmsman. I don't know his exact role, but he is a major part of the rebuild of Evangelion movies, which are basically retellings of the TV series, because the TV series was done in the early 90s, and a lot of time has passed since then. And one of the big things with those movies was that they released the first three, and then the third one had a really troubled production, and then Shin Godzilla was actually his, like, fun, let me regain my sanity project, because Anno is actually a huge fan of, I don't know the name of the actual genre of Japanese monster movie that Godzilla is, but he's a fan of Godzilla, he's a fan of Ultraman, he's a big fan of the big giant monsters that are dudes in rubber suits.
Got it. I think you generally call that tokusatsu.
Tokusatsu.
I believe that's the word.
There we go. And so supposedly he did Shin Godzilla and he had a blast, but he's like, okay, now I need to go and do the last rebuild of Evangelion movie, because people have been waiting for that for like, I want to say almost 5+ years now. But it's just frustrating because, at least to me, Shin Godzilla was very much, I haven't seen too many of the other ones, but it was the first really, really good, quote unquote, serious Godzilla movie I'd seen in a while, where it's like, not that there aren't other ones that are serious or dark, but one where you can actually take it seriously as a film and not just like, this is a fandom and this is a movie and this is a thing that I love, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't want to get into my take too much, because we're going to tackle this soon on the show. But I saw it with you. We both liked it, and you're right. It's hard to do a straight-faced Godzilla, or relatively straight-faced. There's a lot of satirical humor in that movie.
But he did it, I personally thought he did it really, really well. And so...
Yes, and it takes itself a lot more seriously than a lot of other Godzilla movies, and it works. So it's kind of interesting to see them explicitly cut off this path here.
Especially just because, at least for me, like, I really liked Anno's take on it, and I really liked seeing some of Anno's visual elements that are usually, like, locked and shackled only to Evangelion get kind of pushed. Like, he's actually a really adept film director, which really surprised me. So
yeah.
I'm sad that he won't get to have more fun with the franchise. But that's a long way to say that's how I know all about that point.
It makes sense. It is a shame, though. I don't know if this is where he would have gone, but I would have loved to see his take on some of the other monsters.
Yeah.
Because his Godzilla was such a divergence, but it somehow worked. It shared a lot of the spiritual uh, connections to what I know as Godzilla, even if physically it was a very different character.
It was also very cool just to see him take... Again, I'll give this point and then we can move on from Shin Godzilla. It was fun to see him borrow so much from other movies, but do it very, well, explicitly with the music, but do it very stealthily with kind of Godzilla, the character. So, without spoiling future episodes of your show, there's a bunch of monsters that Shin Godzilla kind of combines into one very unique and one distinct whole.
And on a related note, they're like, okay, so instead, we're going to do shared universe movies, which is kind of vague what they mean by that, but I assume it's just like relatively lightweight, fast-moving, action-y type movies where you have various monster personalities meeting and clashing, and as the movies go on, more and more of them are in the movies.
Yes.
And they said that they're going to do it every 2 years, if not every year, a la Marvel. So this is a really
that's bold,
a really ambitious claim, because much as I love this series, two of the times they've done like long-running Godzilla series, they've ended because of severely diminishing box office receipts. I remember the joke about the Millennium Godzilla series is that the only reason it ran so long is because of Hamtaro, because they were on a double feature with Hamtaro. You bought a ticket for the new Godzilla movie, you got the Hamtaro
Are you
movie.
kidding me?
I wish I was joking.
And to add more fuel to that fire, like, just per what I did in college, I saw a lot of like Japanese films, not anime movies, Japanese films. And generally, when it's not, at least for the time, a Godzilla movie, a lot of Japanese cinema can look very, very anemic, or be very, very anemic in terms of just production and quality and star power. There's some really fun stuff, but I've seen a lot of like just video game adaptations and stuff like that, and they're just very like, they don't look great.
Their film industry is not what it used to be. Well, nobody's is, but especially in Japan.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, even the second anime movie, it came out theatrically in Japan very recently, and it did not do very well at all. So I'm doubtful of how well this is going to go. I think that the world loves Godzilla, but maybe not at the pace of a movie every 2 years.
I also don't think Godzilla's the kind of scenario where it's like Marvel, where you can, like, Marvel has this big well where you can just keep digging shit out. Godzilla has a storied history, but not all of it. People aren't screaming for the Mecha King Ghidorah film. I'm sorry.
Right. And not to mention that, although I love these monsters' personalities, they're pretty subtle, because they're giant beasts. There's limits to what you can do with them, because they don't have workplaces or homes or personal relationships or even really families so much.
They do not have set backstories, and when they do have backstories, they will be retconned and redone 1,000 times over.
Sure. But even beyond that, there's just like there's not much you can do without totally flipping the formula upside down, which I would be down for, but I highly doubt they would do. They would need to do something where the monsters could talk and communicate with each other on a regular basis, not like on one-off scenes where they're being translated by a psychic, but like they would actually have to have like the ability to talk to each other all the time, which would be very, very strange, and I would love to see it. But
they did it in a recent Pokemon movie, and it had mixed results.
I bet, and you can imagine how much more mixed it would be for something like Godzilla to be talking all the time. So I'm excited to see how it goes, but I have my doubts at how long running it's going to be.
My hope is that it'll be the kind of thing, which I doubt because they're putting a bunch of money and energy behind it, is that we'll get the, like, and this is relevant to a discussion we had earlier, we'll get the, like, Roger Corman type Godzilla movies where they are rushing them out and they're doing them really quick and they're slapping random scrappy kids to them, and so you just get a bunch of really weird and diverse and crazy, exciting, like, B-movie Godzillas. Not to say I don't want a AAA one, but you get what I mean. And we don't get what was effectively a lot of the 90s Godzilla movies, where it's just like they have really good sparkling moments and then they just kind of keep going downhill into mediocrity.
Yeah, that's honestly what I'm afraid of is those movies where they have, like, recurring human characters, but the monster stuff just gets repetitive most of the time. Not, I mean, that's a problem in general. And it's not a problem for me, it's a problem for the mass populace. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah, how many times can you shoot Godzilla with a laser beam?
Yeah. People in general are going to get tired of that, even if I don't. Now moving on to some of the vaguer stuff, but honestly some of the most exciting. So they're making a strong effort to internationalize their marketing. I know they have limits on what they can do right now because of their agreement with Legendary, but they've made an explicit statement that once that contract has ended, they're going to really push Godzilla merchandise of all kinds in other countries, which is exciting because they haven't so much done that in the past. They've been rather timid with it, and they made the statement that in the past they've prohibited licensors from using Godzilla in a lighthearted way. At the most, he could be cute, but now they're going to allow it because they think that people love Godzilla so much they can, appreciate him in a humorous way, and I'm all for that.
That's an interesting thought. I never imagined Godzilla was like that. They would put that kind of stipulation where, like, you can't have Godzilla be cute in any way, which makes sense for some movies, but is also just kind of like, that's interesting. But that'll be fun.
Toho has been very controlling with how Godzilla's been presented and seen. From a fan perspective, one of the most disappointing things in recent years is a few years ago in the mid to late 2000s, basically every new Godzilla video release had a commentary made for it, and they were always really cool because they were done by major Godzilla historians, and they talked about all kinds of stuff you didn't know, but then Toho started to actually listen to them and put the kibosh on it because they were very sensitive about how Godzilla was being presented. And so there's 3 commentaries that were either released and then withdrawn or never managed to be released because Toho said no. And they're just sitting on a computer somewhere taunting me.
That sounds legitimately amazing.
Yeah. So I'm hoping this is them opening it up to not only Godzilla comedy related stuff and poking fun at him, but also just like being more open to honest criticism and behind the scenes depiction.
Yeah, that would definitely be really nice to see, especially because for their wildly varying quality, Godzilla is definitely like a champion of the B movie in the sense that, like, you just have these really like small budget film, well, not always small budget, but just these films that people pour a lot of heart and soul and artistry into that don't quite get the respect that they really, really deserve, because they actually are, some of them are just really technically impressive, even if they are schlocky, and that's not even getting into the good ones.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to love, as this podcast has been attesting for so long. So, yeah, this is all good news. And then we have their promise. So, basically, sometime within the last couple of years, in Shinjuku, they built a giant Godzilla head and hand on top of one of the skyscrapers. So if you go in Shinjuku and you look up, you can see Godzilla way above you, which is awesome. And it was so popular that Toho has decided to license them to other cities. So if you want, if you want, you can have a giant Godzilla head built on your skyscraper.
That would be amazing. Like one in New York or one in has he hit anywhere else in the United States?
I don't think so. Not yet, anyway. But I want one in LA.
Or wait, I think they hit NorCal, but that doesn't count. But because that movie's not great. Y'all can fight me in the parking lot on that one.
Oh, me too. But I mean, just the idea of being able to look up and see Godzilla there is so cool to me. So I again have my doubts that anyone's gonna take them up on it, or at least anyone outside of Japan. But
it would be the coolest shit. I would love
it. It would be so cool. It would be so fun. But there might be one in a very specific place, because this is my favorite piece of news. I don't know how likely it is. It's probably not very likely, but Toho has expressed an interest in building a Godzilla theme park in Los Angeles.
Oh my god.
Right in our backyard.
Oh no. I don't know. I know you want that to happen, Ryan, but I don't think. My grandpa said what you want will hurt you.
I don't care. I want it, and I want it now.
Oh god. It's already impossible to get to Universal. Like I haven't been to Universal because I can't drive to Universal. It's too much.
I'm just baffled that they think there's the interest, but I'm glad. And I really hope it happens.
It's bold. Worst case, you get a cool derelict Godzilla park hanging out in SoCal.
Yeah. So I'd like to just spitball here. What cool kind of attraction do you think that they would have in this park?
Ooh, that's tough. So I can envision like a kind of cutesy Mothra kidsy ride.
Right, like Dumbo flying around.
I would really, really like to see them, like, I don't know, like, it would be really cool if they could try to preserve as much of the, like, if this will sound weird, the lore of Godzilla as they do these rides. So it would be cool if maybe for, like, the Mothra ride, you were going through, and then so you'd see some evil business tycoon that's like, hey, kids, step right up. Come on the Mothra ride. I would love to see for maybe like the old school roller coaster has like the music and feel of like classic Godzilla, and it has like black and white footage and stuff like that. Just something that feels very authentic to Godzilla, I think, would be good enough for me. And the rest of it's just like it's a theme park, roller coasters. I could see a cool.
I'll tell you what. I've been thinking about this since I was a little kid.
Oh boy!
So I'll tell you what my dream ride is, and how extraordinarily expensive it would be, and how it'll never exist. And then I'll tell you what I think might actually happen and would be cool. So I love the concept of Monsterland, which is just this island where they've contained all the giant monsters, and they all live together in relative harmony. And so, as a kid, I wanted a Monster Island tour.
Oh, that would be sick.
Which, with animatronics, which, even with forced perspective, would require them to be absolutely massive and cost probably trillions of dollars. But I don't care. I want the ride where I'm flying above Monsterland and I get to see Godzilla and Mothra, Rodan, and all of them.
You know what could be a cool way to do that? It could be something like it'd be a cheap out, but it could be something like either Disney's California, Soarin' Over California, or like Star Tours, where you have a very like really well simulated like motion box where you're getting shaken up and it's spraying cold air and all that cool stuff, and then just really really good like videography, like forced perspective, that kind of thing could work really really well, I think.
Yeah, that's probably how they would have to do it. Just the child in me wants it all to be physical and real.
Real puppets.
Actually gigantic, yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely, is some kind of simulator ride, because they already did one for Shin Godzilla in, I think, Universal Osaka. So I have very mixed feelings about those rides. I think that a lot of modern theme parks rely on big screens too much, but when you do it well,
it works.
It is really fun, like on Star Tours. So if you can do like a ride where you're, I don't know, you're in Mothra or some other kind of giant robot, and you're flying through the battle and seeing Godzilla and the good monsters fight the bad monsters, that'd just be so much fun. I couldn't be mad at it.
I think for me too, I just want them to have variety, because again, like Godzilla is such a huge brand with so many creatures you can use. Like, it would be a waste that you just limit yourself to, like, virtual tours. Like, why can't you do a horror-themed ride with some of the 90s monsters? Or why can't you do some, like, have the fun, fluffy kiddie park, have, like, Jet Jaguar and that sort of thing. Like, there's so much to use.
I would certainly love the cutesy stuff, too. I would love a flying around on Mothra ride. And, I mean, there's so much we could talk about. We could spend a whole episode just naming the themed foods at the restaurants. Oh my god. I would have a blast with that. I'll do one. There's gotta be like a Space Godzilla crystal slushy or milkshake or something like that. That's the most obvious
the only thing that movie was good for, or will be good for. I would love to just see kind of wacky, weird shit. Like, I'd love to see some kind of, like, Biolante plant dish just to fuck with people.
I would be so in favor of that. Alright, we've probably prattled on too long, so let's bring this to a close. You got any more random thoughts on this?
No, this news is much more optimistic than I expected. I'm usually I'm not sold on the Godzilla shared universe, but I'm usually much more skeptical about these kind of things, but Godzilla is something that I could see a version of that could do well, unlike the Universal Dark Universe or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they've had it since the beginning, really, since the early 60s, and I honestly think something cool is going to come out of this, and even if someone is going to have a boring and endless series of mediocre movies, I'm at least glad it's Godzilla.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye, everybody.
Until we meet again.
In the Godzilla theme park. If you haven't yet, leave a nice comment or review wherever you like to listen. That would really help us out. That's it for this show, but we'll see you soon. In the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.